Okay, here is a little tutorial on how I make my circular or mandala type designs. What I'm doing is I'm taking the figure 8 and I'm drawing a little organic shape. I'm then double clicking on it and point editing. We're going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what's going on. I'm going to widen it a little bit. So even if you don't love the shape that you start with, you can really adjust it. So what I'm going to do at the top is I'm going to use a corner, and I'm going to take those little blue handlebars, which allow me to change this curve. So it's a much more leaf-like curve. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. On the bottom, I had to actually change it to corner. And once I have a shape that I like, I'm going to do increase the line a little bit so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to do an internal offset because I want to frame around the leaf for this particular design. And you can, take the same shape and use it so many different ways. And this is just one that I think looks nice, but you don't need to do the offset. And this is more of a floral type design. So I'm going to join them together and make them a compound path. Then I'm going to take the center of rotation and pull it down. And if you don't have that showing, there's a default where you can actually make it show. You can turn it on and off. So we want to go to the preferences, and then we want to go down to the defaults. And you'll go up a little bit, and there is a choice to show the center of rotation or not show it. So you want to make sure that's checked to do any of this technique. Now we're going to go to the replicate window, which is an amazing, amazing window. We're going to go down to the advanced options, and you can actually tell it how many times you want to replicate. And we want 12 times, so I'm going to put 11 in because I already have one. And then we're going to go down and to say what angle. And what I did here is I divided 360 degrees by 12 to get a wonderful floral design. I'm going to make it a compound path, and now all those shapes will stay together. I'm going to duplicate it because we're going to do a couple other things with this same design. So I'm going to change the color on this one so it looks a little bit differently. And on this one, I'm going to do an internal offset. So what you're doing is you're taking the general shape and letting the computer do different iterations to create a new design. So what I'm doing is as you go up, the extra line that you're creating here is going to go further and further from the original line. And once you get a design that you like, you can hit apply. And then once you hit apply, we're going to make this whole thing a compound path so it'll stay together. So right click, compound path. And now we are going to take and do some tracing. So I'm going to duplicate this, move it over, and now I'm going to make the line even thicker. And this is what I do for this particular method. You're giving it a thicker line to trace, so you're going to get a little more different open look. So I'm going to switch it to 6. And you can even go thicker. It just depends. And once I've got it that way, I'm going to go and do a tracing, which is the little blue box with a yellow outline on it. Okay, now I have the trace window, and I'm doing a drag box using select trace area. I'm going to uncheck the high pass filter. I'm going to move the threshold up a little bit. I'm going to move the scale down a little bit. It's a wonderful video called Tracing Without Tears that tells you all about this by Clever Someday online. So I've got a really nice little tracing, but it looks very different than the other ones. And you can actually do a fill, and I'll show you how we can tell if we want to do that. So I'm going to trace again, and this time we're going to play with something we don't normally play with, and it's called, it's a low pass filter. So I'm going to do exactly what I did before. And now I'm going to play around with a low pass filter, which softens the shape in different areas. And so what I can do is I can close in some of those areas and get a tracing. And once you've got it where you want, and I'm going up and down as I go up, different parts are closing in. I'm going to trace it, and I'll pull it aside. And that's a very different lacy look, definitely less floral, more of a lace. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a color fill on this left one. And that's how before I do any kind of filling or internal offset to fill it, I want to do that to see what it'll look like. And it gives you really good ideas if you filled between those two lines all the way around with etching, what it would look like. And so we have 5 different designs from one little shape to start with. So we're going to do the same thing, only this time I'm using a sharp design, and I used the hourglass symbol instead of the figure 8. And you can see that you can get a very different look. So I'm going to go back to the advanced functions under replicate. And I'm going to choose the same 30-degree angle. And this is more star-like and very different. I'm going to make this a compound path. And I'm going to do an offset on it. And this is an external offset, not an internal offset. And I'm going to push it out a little bit, so I'm making it further away from the original line. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to make that a compound path. And now I'm going to do an internal offset. And I'm making it actually closer to the line, and it's filling in every little area there and giving you a very different design. And once I've got it where I want, I apply. And then I'm going to make it a compound path. And then I'm going to do a color fill so we can actually see what it might look like if I did some filling on it. Or you also use color fill, and that's really cool. If you want to make a stamp out of something, you use a black color fill to use photopolymer plates and the impact system. So now I'm going to use the organic shape, and we're going to make another design. I'm going to turn it and do a little point editing. And then I'm going to take the center of rotation and I'm going to pull it down. First I'm going to make it a little thicker so you can see it. And the cool thing is you pull the center of rotation down and you can rotate it, and you can just hit the undo key and do it differently. And that's what's going to happen with this one, and you'll see some different things that happen. So in this case, I'm going to do 9, which means I divide 360 by 10 to get 36. And I'm going to replicate. And that's okay, but I'm not terribly thrilled with that, so I'm going to undo. And now I'm going to try doing twice as many, so I'll do 18. And then I want to add 10 to the 9, so it makes it 19. And then I'm going to replicate. What happened was, which is this is kind of a cool, would be a very interesting pendant. But what I forgot to do is I need to hit the tab key when I enter the 19 up at the top, and I'll show you right now. Right there, if I hit the tab key, it's going to actually enter it. So we're going to go down and we're going to replicate. And I think that's kind of cool. You can make it a compound path. So you can do totally symmetrical star shapes. Some people want to do an exact star shape. This looks like a gear. I wasn't terribly thrilled with it, so I'm just going to delete it and try some other things. This is one of my favorite ones. This is a special drawing tool that came about with version 3. And it draws all different shapes, and you can use a little slider bar to make it 6-sided, 7-sided, 8-sided, 3-sided shapes. And with this one, I'm going to do 20 rotations, and it looks very much like a faceted gem, I think. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to make this a compound path. And then I'm going to take this original one and move it aside. I'm going to show you what happens when we do an internal offset on this one. And I think it creates a really pretty pattern. And very unusual. And you really, it's pretty tough to replicate the same one. So every time you do this, you're getting a little bit different design. So it's a very creative process. I'm going to color fill it so you can see what it looks like. And I think that looks really cool. I'm going to trace this now. And sometimes you can color fill and trace and you get a different view. So I'm going to select the trace area. I'm going to uncheck the high pass filter. I'm going to play around with the threshold a little bit, and then I'm going to play with scale. And now we're going to go back and we're going to use the low pass filter. And I'm going to move it up and down until I get what I think is going to look good. And you can see in this case, when I do the tracing, I'm actually not very happy with it. So I'm going to pull it aside, and I don't think that's very interesting, so I just hit undo, and it took me right back where I was, and now I can, again, start playing with the low-pass filter and get a different tracing, hopefully one I like better. What I want is I want those little things that look like little bananas going around the center. I want those attached to the parts next to them. So I'm going to change it until I'm happy. I'm going to hit trace. And that's actually, I think, a much nicer design. So that's how we do the mandalas, and I'm going to show you some of my favorite ones.